Himsa, non-violence. Ahimsa is the pure thought of India, non-violence. Ahimsa is really inspired by universal love. Himsa means to want to kill, to want to harm. Ahimsa is therefore the renunciation of all intention of death or harm caused by violence. Ahimsa is the opposite of egotism. Ahimsa is absolute altruism and love. Ahimsa is upright action. Mahatma Gandhi made of Ahimsa the staff of his political doctrine. Gandhi defined the manifestation of Ahimsa in this manner: non-violence does not consist of renouncing all real struggle against evil. Non-violence, as I conceive it, establishes a more active campaign against evil than the law of the Talion, whose nature itself results in the development of perversity. I raise before the immoral a mental opposition, and consequently, a moral one. I try to whet the tyrant's sword not by clashing it against a better sharpened steel, but by disappointing his hopes by not offering any physical resistance. He will find in me a resistance of the soul which will escape his assault. This resistance will first of all blind him and will immediately force him to surrender. And the act of surrendering will not humiliate the aggressor but will dignify him. There is not a more powerful weapon than a well-directed mind. The ego is the one that disunites, betrays and establishes anarchy within poor suffering humanity. Egoism, treason and the lack of brotherhood has divided humanity. The I was neither created by God nor by the Spirit nor by matter. The I was created by our own mind and will cease to exist when we have comprehended it totally in all the levels of the mind. It is only through upright action, upright meditation, upright will, upright means of earning a living, upright effort and upright memory that we can dissolve the I. It is urgent to comprehend in depth all of this if we really want the revolution of the dialectic. The personality should not be confused with the I really. The personality is formed during the 7 years of infancy and the I is the error which is perpetuated from century to century, fortifying itself more and more each time with the mechanics of recurrence. The personality is energetic, is born with habits, customs, ideas, etc. during infancy and is fortified with the experiences of life. Both the personality as well as the I should be disintegrated. We are more revolutionary in the psychological teachings than Gurdjieff and Ouspensky. The I utilizes the personality as an instrument of action. Personalism results from that mixture of ego and personality. Personality worship was invented by the I. Really, personalism engenders egoisms, hatreds, violences, etc. All of this is rejected by Ahimsa. Personalism totally ruins esoteric organizations. Personalism produces anarchy and confusion. Personalism can totally destroy any organization. In each reincorporation return, the ego fabricates a new personality. Each person is different in each new embodiment. It is urgent to know how to live. When the I is dissolved, the great reality, true happiness, that which has no name, comes to us. Let us distinguish between the being and the I. The man of today only has the I. Man is a being that is not yet attained. It is urgent to attain the being. It is necessary to know that the being is limitless happiness. It is absurd to say that the being is the superior I, the divine I, etc. The being of a universal and cosmic type, cannot have the flavor of ego. Let us not try to make the I divine. Ahimsa is non-violence in thought, word and deed. Ahimsa is respect for others' ideas, respect for all religions, schools, sects, organizations, etc. Let us not expect the I to evolve because the I never perfects itself ever. We need a total revolution of consciousness. This is the only type of revolution that we accept. The doctrine of Ahimsa is based on the revolution of the dialectic, on the revolution of consciousness. As we die from instant to instant, harmony among men slowly develops. As we die from instant to instant, the sense of cooperation keeps on totally replacing the sense of competition. As we die from moment to moment, goodwill replaces ill will little by little. Men of goodwill accept Ahimsa. It is impossible to initiate a new order in our psyche while excluding the doctrine of non-violence. Ahimsa should be cultivated in homes by following the path of the perfect marriage. It is only with non-violence in thought and deed that happiness can reign in homes. Ahimsa should be the foundation of daily living at the office, at the workshop, in the countryside, at home, on the street, etc. We should live the doctrine of non-violence. Gregarious conduct. Gregarious conduct is the tendency that the human machine has to mix with others, without distinction and without control of any type. Let us see what one does when in a group or in multitudes. I am sure that very few persons would dare to go out into the street to throw stones at someone. However, when in a group, they do so. Someone can slip into a public demonstration and, on being fired up with enthusiasm, ends up joining the masses in throwing stones, although later he will ask himself, why did I do it? When in a group, the human being behaves very differently. He does things that he would never do when alone. What is this due to? It is due to negative impressions to which he opens the doors, and he ends up doing things that he would never do alone. When one opens the doors to negative impressions, he not only alters the order of the emotional center which is in the heart, but he also makes it negative. One opens his doors, for example, to a negative emotion that a person brings full of anger because someone hurt him. Then, we end up aligning ourselves with that person, against the other who hurt him and also full of anger, without playing any role in the matter. Let us suppose that one opens the doors to the negative impressions of a drunkard. One ends up accepting a drink, then 2, 3, 10. In conclusion, one ends up a drunkard also. Let us suppose that one opens the doors to the negative impressions of a person of the opposite sex. One ends up most probably fornicating and committing all types of transgressions. If we open the doors to the negative impressions of a drug addict, we end up maybe smoking marijuana or consuming some type of inhibitors. As a conclusion, failure will come. In this manner, human beings infect each other with negative atmospheres. Thieves make other persons into thieves. Murderers infect someone else. Drug addicts infect other people, and drug addicts, thieves, usurers, murderers, etc. multiply. Why? Because we commit the error of always opening our doors to negative emotions, and that is never right. Let us select our emotions. If someone brings us positive emotions of light, of beauty, of harmony, of happiness, of love, of perfection, let us open the doors of our heart to him. But if someone brings us negative emotions of hate, violence, jealousy, of drugs, alcohol, of fornication and adultery, why should we open the doors of our heart? Let us close them. Close the doors to negative emotions. When one reflects on gregarious conduct, one can modify it perfectly and make something better out of life. The deformation of the word. The sound of a canyon, its explosion, destroys the glass of a window. On the other hand, a soft word pacifies anger or wrath. But an insulting, inharmonious word produces anger or melancholy, sadness, hatred, etc. It is said that silence is gold, but it is better to say that it is as incorrect to speak when one should be silent as it is to be silent when one should speak. There are criminal silences, there are infamous words. One should calculate with nobility the result of spoken words, for oftentimes one hurts others with words in an unconscious manner. Words full of ill-intended meaning produce fornications in the world of the mind, and arrhythmic words engender violence in the world of the cosmic mind. One should never condemn anyone with a verb because one should never judge anyone. Slander, gossip and calumny have filled the world with pain and bitterness. If we work with sexual superdynamics, we have to comprehend that the creative energies are exposed to all kinds of modifications. These energies of the libido can be modified into powers of light or darkness. It all depends on the quality of the words. The perfect man speaks words of perfection. The Gnostic student who wishes to follow the path of the revolution of the dialectic should become accustomed to controlling the tongue. One should learn to handle the verb. It is not what enters the mouth that causes harm to man, but rather what comes out of it. The mouth supplies insults, intrigues, defamation, calumny, debates. All of these are what harm man. Avoid all types of fanaticism because we cause great harm to man, to our fellow man with it. One does not only hurt others with insulting words or with fine and artistic ironies, but also with the tone of the voice, with the inharmonious and arrhythmic accent. Knowing how to listen. We have to learn to listen. In order to learn to listen, we have to awaken consciousness. In order to learn to listen, we have to know how to be present. The one who listens always escapes via his psychological country and city. The human personality does not know how to listen, neither does the physical body because it is its vehicle. People are full of themselves, of their pride, of their faculties, of their theories. There is not a little corner or empty space for knowledge, for the verb. We should have our bowl facing upwards, like the Buddha, to receive the Christic word. Psychological listening is very difficult. We have to learn to be attentive in order to know how to listen. We have to become more receptive to the word. People do not remember their previous existences because they are not in their psychological house, because they are outside of it. One has to remember oneself. One has to relax the body as many times as we can during the day. People commit many errors because of forgetting the being. Great things happen to one when one remembers oneself. Consultation is necessary, but the important thing is to know how to listen. In order to know how to listen, one has to have the emotional, motor and intellectual centers in supreme attention. False education impedes one from listening. False education harms the 5 centers of the human machine: the intellectual, motor, emotional, instinctive and sexual centers. One has to listen with a spontaneous mind, free of mental assumptions, theories and preconceptions. One has to open oneself to what is new with an integral mind, with a mind not divided by the battle of the antithesis. The exactness of the term. As the basis of his dialectic, Socrates demanded precision of terminology. In our revolution of the dialectic, we demand precision of the verb as a basis. The word, a distinguishing feature of humans, is the instrument of individual expression and communication among men. It is the vehicle of exterior language in the discharge or exteriorization of the complicated interior language, which can both be utilized by the being or by the ego. Plato, in the Dialogue Phaedo, expressed to one of his disciples a concept which is famous for its profundity and moral delicacy, as a human principle of idiomatic propriety. It says as follows: "Be it known unto you, my dear Crito, that speaking in an improper manner is not only committing a fault in what is said but also a t of damage which is caused to the souls. If we want to resolve problems, we should abstain from expressing one's opinion. Every opinion can be debated. We should resolve a problem by meditating on it. It is necessary to resolve it with the mind and the heart. We should learn to think for ourselves. It is absurd to repeat like parrots the opinions of others. When the ego is annihilated, the optional processes of the mind disappear. An opinion is the emission of a concept out of fear that another concept might be the truth, and this indicates ignorance. It is urgent to learn to not identify with problems. It is necessary to explore ourselves sincerely and then maintain mental and verbal silence. The psychological robot. The intellectual animal is similar to a robot programmed by mechanical wheels, and he is also similar to a clock because he keeps repeating the same movements of past existences. The human being, falsely called man, is a psychological robot who does nothing. Everything happens to him. The being is the only one who does. The being causes to surge what he wants because he is not a mechanical entity. One has to cease being an intellectual robot, because a robot always repeats the same thing. He does not have independence. The psychological robot is influenced by the laws of the moon: recurrence, conception, death, hatred, egoism, violence, conceit, hardiness, self-importance, immoderate covetousness, etc. One has to work with sexual superdynamics in order to create a permanent center of gravity and to become independent of the moon. In order to cease being a psychological robot, it becomes necessary to dominate oneself. Faust achieved it, but Cornelius Agrippa did not achieve it because he set himself to theorize. People are interested in exploiting the world, but what is more important is to exploit oneself, because the one who exploits himself dominates the world. The psychological robot who wants to become a man and then a superman should develop the capacity of sustaining the notes. When someone really wants to cease being a machine, he has to undergo the first crisis, me, fa, and then undergo the second crisis, la, si. The key of winners to pass the crisis and to cease being a psychological robot is choice, change and decision. The entire work is done in 7 scales and one acquires the near-omniscient sound of the universe. Anger annihilates the capacity to think and resolve the problems it originates. Obviously, anger is a negative emotion. 2 negative emotions of anger that confront each other do not achieve peace nor creative comprehension. Unquestionably, when we project anger onto another human being, a crumbling of our image is always produced, and this is never convenient in the world of the interrelations. The diverse processes of anger lead the human being towards horrible social, economic and psychological failures. It is clear that one's health is also affected by anger. There exist certain foolish persons who enjoy anger since it gives them a certain air of superiority. In these cases, anger is combined with pride. Anger is also usually combined with conceit and even with self-sufficiency. Kindness is a much more crushing force than anger. An angry argument is nothing but excitement lacking conviction. On confronting anger, we should decide, we should choose the type of emotion that is most convenient. Thus, whoever lets himself be controlled by anger destroys his own image. The man who has complete self-control will always be on top. Frustration, fear, doubt and guilt originate the processes of anger. Frustration, fear, doubt and guilt cause anger. Whoever liberates himself from these 4 negative emotions will dominate the world. To accept negative passions is something that goes against self-respect. Anger is of crazy persons, it serves no purpose, it leads us to violence. The goal of violence is to lead us to violence, and the latter produces more violence. The personality. The personality is multiple and has many hidden depths. In it is deposited the karma of previous existences, karma in the process of fulfillment or crystallization. The impressions which are not digested become new psychic aggregates, and what is more serious, they become new personalities. The personality is not homogeneous but rather heterogeneous and plural. One should select impressions in the same manner that one chooses the things of life. If one forgets oneself at a given instant, before a new event, new I are formed, and if they are very strong, they become new personalities within the personality. Therein lies the cause of many traumas, complexes and psychological conflicts. An impression which is not digested, which gets to form a personality within the personality, and which is not accepted, becomes a source of frightening conflicts. Not all the personalities which one carries in the personality are accepted, the latter giving origin to many traumas, complexes, phobias, etc. Before all else, it is necessary to comprehend the multiplicity of the personality, that it is multiple in itself. Therefore, there could be someone who may have disintegrated the psychic aggregates, but if he does not disintegrate the personality, he will not be able to attain authentic enlightenment and the joy of living. When one knows oneself more and more, one knows others more and more each time. The individual with an ego does not see things clearly and makes mistakes. Those who have ego fail because they lack judgment, even when a tremendous logic exists in their analysis. If impressions are not digested, new I are created. One has to learn to select impressions. It is not a matter of being better. What interests us is change. The being surges forth when one has changed and ceased to exist. The undesirable elements which we carry in our interior are the ones which control our perceptions, preventing us from having an integral perception which brings us joy and happiness.